Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maryann Pagano. I am Chief Executive Officer of BlackHawk Data. I want to welcome everybody online and everyone here in the room who gave up their time to be with us. This is our final installment of 2023's Women in Tech. It's been a great year for us. One of the reasons I started this was to give back to our community, to find ways to share our stories and share with the audience and people wanting to come into the technology space. So it's been such a great ride for the last couple of years, and I can't wait to see what 2024 brings. For those that don't know me, my name is Maryann Pagano, again, Chief Executive Officer of BlackHawk Data. I am a solutions provider in the New York area. My partner Jason and I started the business about 5 years ago. So we've on a very long 5-year journey. Feels like yesterday, but it was a very long journey. So it's been a great journey for us. I come from the solution provider space. So in 2018, we decided, hey, why not quit your job and start from scratch? So we did. Here we are about 5.5 years later. We've got a staff of about 45. We have an office here in New York, one in New Jersey, and we're headed for greatness. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Lori.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Lori Gillen. First of all, thank you so much, Maryann, for the invitation to be on this panel with these amazing women. I'm really excited and very honored to be here. My name is Lori Gillen. I've been with Cisco for over 25 years. It seems amazing to me that it's been that long. The journey that I've had throughout the company over these years have really kind of led to where I am today. When I was first started at Cisco, we were a very small company. Even though we were a public company at that time, it still had that small feel. Very small field office in New Jersey is where I started. I started out in the commercial space. From there, I did a little bit of web design over the course of my time there. And then I moved over into our global data center sales teams. I was there for about 12 years. And then I took a leap of faith and I went over to the partner organization, and I have been here for about 4.5 years now. So it's been a very exciting time to learn this side of the business. Just to see all these facets of Cisco's business over these 25 years have been really thrilling to be. I have a graphic arts degree, which seems funny in the technology field, but it really has been very helpful when I was doing the web design assignment for Cisco. And it also allows me to be a little bit creative with my partners, to have that sort of different lens when we're doing some strategy and planning, and really to try to help them go to market in a very successful way, and to be creative and to really kind of say, let's look at it from this point of view. So I really feel like that that part of my career has definitely helped me in this part of my career today. I have seen Cisco grow from the small, like I said, for a small company to the transformational to where we are today. We are started out with a route switch company, and now we're all the way through to software and services. So in my personal life, Maryann and I were just talking about trying to keep that work-life balance. I do have 2 grown children. I have one that lives out of state, one that's a senior in college, coming home on Saturday. Excited for that. And then just to kind of, again, just to make sure that I, keep my lives separately, I do work out a lot. I love to run. I'm an avid runner. I've run several marathons and half marathons and everything in between. I do a little bit of Pure Barre a couple of times a week to also complement that. And I try to keep active in my community. I volunteer in my town. I volunteer at a horse rescue, which I find very rewarding. So I'm actually very thrilled to be here today, and I'm looking forward to a great session. Thank you.
Cheyenne.
Awesome. That was wonderful. Thank you. So Cheyenne Goodman, I'm the Vice President of Enterprise in the Northeast at SentinelOne. And thank you, Maryann. Again, this is wonderful. Really honored to have been invited. Huge fan of BlackHawk Network and of Maryann in general. So I really appreciate the invitation. I have been with SentinelOne. We're a cybersecurity company that is growing by leaps and bounds. If anybody just saw our exciting Q3 earnings, I started the company. I was employee number 50. We have 2,500 employees today and almost 12,000 customers. And when I started, I think we had 4 customers. So really fun to be on that journey with the company. I used to run sales for us in California and the Pacific Northwest. I'm originally from the San Francisco Bay Area, but moved to New York to help us run our Northeast business. And I love it. So I was just joking with these ladies that I obviously I grew up in the most expensive area and then chose to move to the other most expensive area. So I don't know what that says about me, but yeah, big fan of New York and the Bay Area. Previously to SentinelOne, I worked at McAfee for quite some time. I also was an early joiner of FireEye. They're a huge company now, but I was employee, I think, number 80 of FireEye. So I do love startups. I love to help them grow. I found in my time at really large companies, it wasn't quite my perfect space, but I loved being an early joiner of FireEye as well. I started in cybersecurity sales in I think 2007 with WebSense. They're called ForcePoint now. I never, an interesting thing about me that I sometimes feel reluctant to share is I've never been to college. And I think that's unusual in, for somebody to make it to the VP level. But I do think that we can speak more about it, that there is the ability for anybody to succeed if they're, really focused on what their goals are and they're able to articulate those goals and be inquisitive and ask the right questions. So sales is also one of those industries where whether you like it or not, what matters is if you can drive revenue into the company. So I think that's kind of interesting and exciting because that does open up the door to a lot of different people who might not come from traditional backgrounds. I do not come from a traditional background. Maryann knows this story. I mean, my parents are, hippies in the most intense sense of the word. So in fact, my name Cheyenne was, my dad was hanging out and doing all kinds of things with Jimi Hendrix, and Jimi Hendrix thought I should be named Melchizedek, and luckily my dad and my mom kind of shot that down. Thankfully, I'm like, I don't know what you were smoking, Dad, but that is, I mean, can you imagine Melchizedek? So Cheyenne is my name. My mother claims that I spoke to her from her womb and said that was my name. And I so I guess my point with all of that is, nobody in my family works in cybersecurity. So it's an understatement. But I love the cybersecurity industry, and I had no idea when I joined it that it would take off the way that it has, because certainly in 2007, unless you were a bank, there were no chief information security officers. There were not a lot of regulations, and it wasn't a hot topic in the White House. These days, it's on everybody's lips, on everybody's mind. So it's a great space to be in. I'm proud to be at SentinelOne, and I'm excited to be here today. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bonnie.
Hi, thank you, Maryann. So I'm Bonnie Sparkman. I work at Fortinet. I've been here for about 6 years, and I am now running the ABM practice. For those of you who don't know ABM, it's account-based marketing, but just think of it as, enterprise selling, but just on the marketing side. So we carry all the way through from inception all the way to deal close and customer advocacy. So that's what's a little bit different about it. But I originally came to Fortinet in the Northeast field marketing role, and ABM kind of grew from that. But I've held various roles. I originally started in telecom, actually, and so I was a lot of corporate roles, whether it's primary, secondary research, dashboards, metrics, demand gen, more traditional sense. And I also have an unusual background, I think, for marketing, is that I'm actually schooled as electrical engineer. So I can resonate with you on that. And I found cybersecurity actually after telecom. I wanted to go to an industry that was actually growing and not shrinking. And it's just a refreshing breath of air, and it's great to be in the tech space. So thank you, Maryann, so much for inviting me to this. I'm very excited for the conversation.
It's funny, Cheyenne, you said something before about, you talk about not going to college, right? So I don't say that either, because I haven't either, right? So I think that's an important topic for a lot of people, because not everyone can afford college or does well in college, right? I was one of those kids who did not do well in college and whose mom sent her to the workforce. So I think that's important to note, right? I think part of what we're supposed to be doing in terms of the women in tech is telling people what they're capable of, right? You don't have to have a Harvard education, right? It's great if you do, but you don't. You can still make something of yourself, right? For me, being a CEO and not having a college degree, again, I'm not promoting that, so parents, don't send me emails about how you're not promoting me. I'm just saying you don't have to if you don't. It's still okay. You can still be successful in your career. So we're going to go through some of the questions and see where that leads us. So we talk about being in the IT industry, right? We obviously are a very male-dominated industry. So we look back, and Lori and I were having this conversation before, right? If you look back to when we first started in the industry, how many women were there to support you, or how many people did you look up to? It came up as a question last week at Women at the Channel, right? For those in the industry 20 years or greater, there weren't a lot of people to actually reach out to, right? You kind of have to be self-made. So for me, it was kind of me just being who I am and being self-made. That was part of my challenge, right, when I got in the industry, is there wasn't anybody I can really go to, right, and kind of lead me through. And that's kind of, again, why we're doing these things, right, so that they have people they can reach out to. If you talk about your career and challenges, anything stand out on you that you think, you know, was a challenge for you that we could try to fix for the go forward, maybe as females?
You know, I think as I look back, it really started, like you said, you know, very male dominated, and there really wasn't much to lean on. And most of, you know, when you came in and you met that female engineer, you were like, wow, that's, you know, I'm impressed, because especially on the engineering side, it really wasn't, you know, that much. But I really believe that the recognition now is there. With all the STEM programs that are out there. I know that, you know, in the high school that was in my town, it was a huge organization, and they really promoted, you know, a lot of the females to join that. You know, don't think of it as you know, that you can't do it, you know, so definitely do it, you know, because you don't know where it's going to lead.
Yeah, you totally don't. Cheyenne, anything stand out on you?
Yeah, I think, I mean, certainly you see more women in sales, in tech sales today than there was when I started. I was fortunate. The first role I ever took as a BDR at WebSense, the woman that brought me on, I had been an administrative assistant for her years prior at a staffing firm. So that's one thing about, you know, networking, and if you do well in your job, you know, people remember you and keep those networks alive. Shout out to Sherry Riley if she's listening to this. She gave me an opportunity. But I also say that there were the VP at the time for sales at WebSense, you know, took a chance on me. And so, you know, there are also, I think, you know, I'll say there are men who in leadership positions who want to bring more women into the fold. But the biggest challenge was, you know, not the lack of college degree. I'm, you know, educated person and articulate and able to express what I want to say. And I have a lot of hustle and a lot of drive. I think the biggest challenge was just being intimidated by the fact that it was mostly men. And, you know, even today, although it's much better now, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been into a room to do a presentation and I've been the only female, and it's been sometimes 10, 12, 40 men, right? And so it is a little intimidating. On the other hand, it can work for you too, right? Because people do appreciate being around diverse thoughts, diverse opinions. Sometimes men appreciate having a woman in the room. It deflates things a little bit. It can kind of remove some of the, forgive me for saying this, some of the masculine, like, ego kind of bumping that happens, right, when there's a female in the room. So although at times it's been challenging, I think it's also worked for me. I also think that I never tried to I don't believe sales is like a hyper masculine macho sport. I think that it's a very knowledge driven profession where you really have to understand your customers' problems and, you know, empathize with them and work to solve them, which, you know, not to be sort of gender stereotyping here, is something that women are generally very good at, like my ability to listen and take in what other people were saying. I think it's worked for me in a lot of cases, and there certainly have been challenges. I'll mention a time that, you know, I had a manager who I was going for a promotion, male manager, asked me, you know, how was I going to then get dinner on the table at the time? And this was not that long ago. So you do bump up against it occasionally, and, you know, some sexual harassment happens as well. But I think for the most part, if you really are, you know, highly professional person, you can leverage your female or feminine qualities to your advantage. Yeah.
Well, I think for me, my journey being surrounded by men started when I was very young. I have 3 brothers, and if there's any doubt why I'm an engineer, my parents named us Aaron, Bonnie, Christopher, and David, so alphabetical order. Yes. And we're also like kind of born 18 months apart, 4 years apart, 18 months apart. So I kind of thought I'd have to be an engineer when I grew up. I mean, I didn't know what I wanted to do. My dad says, well, just be an engineer and then you can just do whatever you want after that. I said, okay, Dad. I'm like 18. Like, what do I know? Like, I chose my school based on the fact that they let me, who's only 5'2", play on the volleyball team, right? so yes, I wound up being the captain of the volleyball team. It was a wonderful experience, and I became an electrical engineer. And then I went into the telecom space, which again, a lot of guys, no problem. I'm just surrounded by my men folk. But I think, sometimes, I think it's just about giving a different perspective. Like for the person who said that to you, I had a male manager ask me once, like, how's it going for the holidays? I'm like, well, I'm running around getting gifts. I got to do cards. Well, my wife does all of that. And I'm like, I don't have a wife, it's just an awareness. And I think that's what it's going to take for us to really kind of come together. It's, like Cheyenne was saying, it's about the perspective aspect that I think is just is so rewarding. And even with the kids today, right? I think it's great that there's so many STEM programs. We didn't have that when we were growing up at all. And I have 2 daughters, they're 14 and 12. And so I am saying, like, go out there and do whatever you want. You don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Like, who knows you better than yourself, right? So, and when we walk into the room and we're like the only woman in the room, it's happened many times, like, you should stand on your integrity and you know what you know. And it doesn't matter to me if you're male or female. Like, do you know your stuff? Are you willing to work and collaborate? And so I think when I walk into a room, that's what I bring. And I think that is what helps bring everybody together. So hopefully that
Perfect. Thank you. One of the things we were talking about, we had a GovTech recently in the city, and then we had Women of the Channel, was using your network, right? So I'm a prime example of using your network, right? So I spent 25 years in the channel, right? So I've done this my whole career. I've worked closely with all the vendors, every manufacturer on the planet. So when you quit a job and you literally have 2 people, myself and Jason, and a cell phone, and you're like, well, what do I actually do next, right? He's like, don't you know some people? I was like, maybe, like, I don't know. So I just went through the Rolodex of people in my cell phone because that's all I really had. And I just made call after call after call until we finally got some traction, right? So by the end of the Z's, I was like, oh, I'm out of people now. But I use my network to build a business, people that I've known for forever, people that I needed advice from, people that I've waiting for them to pay it forward to me because I've paid it forward for so long. And that's how I used my network, and it worked, and it works still today. And there's a push-pull, with the vendors today. We've gotten past the using your network to build business, so now it's you're using your network to help continue the business on. Right? So from a networking perspective, I tell everybody, use your network around you. Build a network of people. Male, female, doesn't make a difference, right? Build the people around you, because most people that I call when I needed help were men, right? And they all jumped up and helped. So use your network around you to help make you stronger, better, and introduce you to other people. I mean, that's my concept for everybody, is the network piece. That's the biggest thing for me, because if I didn't have that, I don't know where I would have started.
You can't go it alone, right? It always takes a village, regardless of what you're doing.
Yes.
I think that it especially when you're like long in your career, you've met so many different people because so many different walks of life have kind of entered into your life. You pick and choose really where you feel that those people are going to empower you the best, where they're going to have your back when it matters, how you're going to use them to help you, and then reciprocate that along the line. So to have a network, I think it's important to have a network within your company and then outside of your company, because the perspectives are always different.
Yep.
They know you in different areas of your life too. So they know you when you were just starting out, a little bit green and making some mistakes along the way. And then when they see you where you are, right, they can really be very impressed by really what you have accomplished. But then you've met people along the way, they don't know your history. So you have a different perspective, but they have a different perspective of you too, but they can also help you in a different way too. So a network is super powerful because, again, you need support, you need help, because that's really the way. There are so many different drivers out there that are grasping at our attention, but when you have those people that are there to help you, and really sometimes if you need, you just need a sound check, or you just need a little bit of a check-in. Am I doing this right? Or, you're at the crossroads. You pick that person that had your back, that knows you the best, that could help you out. So I think it's a network, your network in your company and outside of your, whether it's your personal life or just even other people that you've met along your way, is always helpful.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned from the start, if I hadn't kept my network going from somebody I'd even met, previous to cybersecurity sales, I would not have, I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for that network. I've continued to, I mean, the cliche of it's all about relationships, but we are humans after all. We might, have fancy titles or work at, big high-tech companies, but, humans are still social creatures who rely on each other for community, to hear, stories, to bounce ideas off each other and to support each other. So one thing I've always tried to do is be proactive in helping people and respond when people ask me for help, even if I'm not right then getting anything in return, because you never know who might come back around to help you at some point. And not just the right thing to do, but there's a way in which that kind of builds. And if you do that enough, and you're just be a really good person who's kind, friendly, open, willing to have a kind word for somebody, spread some good cheer, because these are stressful jobs that we're talking about, and the people that we work with and our customers are stressed. I mean, it's an intense world that we live in today, especially in the tech sector. If you are that friendly face and that warm individual who comes across as authentic and caring and not just out for yourself, I found that it pays you back like tenfold, and people remember you, because it seems like there's not a lot of that in the tech sector. People who are willing to just, truly be genuinely kind and warm and offer that type of support. And then I've called in favors when I need them, whether it's been I'm, going for a new job and I need somebody to speak as a reference for me, or I'm, trying to sell to a specific prospect and I need somebody to be a reference around the product, or, I have two sons. My youngest is graduating from college soon and wants to get into cybersecurity. So I've started calling in, favors for him. So he better not embarrass me once he gets out there. We'll see. But I think, networking really is about, building relationships in the community and the community that you live in. The other thing that I think is interesting, no matter how big the world gets, is IT, technology, and especially cybersecurity is a small world. It really is amazing how many people you are just slightly, connected to. And, you realize somebody who knows somebody. So the last thing I'll say on that is, and it sounds basic, is don't burn bridges. People remember if you do, and so make your word your bond and be somebody that people can count on, and it really will make a difference.
All right. So from the networking perspective, for me, like, just to echo what Lori and Cheyenne said, but for me, it's about the caring of the individuals. Like as an ABM marketer, as a partner to sales, as a partner to the customers, like people want to be heard, they want to be understood, right? They want you to care about them, I think. And I think that caring can differentiate you and make you more memorable in the long run, right? If you can remember somebody's kid's name, right? You ask them the next time. These are ways to build relationship, and do it genuinely, and they will remember you. And you're not necessarily doing it for any other reason but to make them feel human. And I think it's something that's really important to take forward. And, a way to build your network, besides the people you interact with day to day, when you go to conferences, when you go to like outside meetings, you're in your community, I would just say, like, you ask them one question that makes it sound like you were really listening to them, right? Or you offer them a little bit of something. So when you LinkedIn them later, they're going to remember you, right? So these are just some tips and tricks that I've learned along the way that I didn't consciously know I was doing it, but it's been very successful because people have asked me about it before. So, when you build your network, and I would, follow on with that, just say, like, find the people who have the good energy. Like, that's the energy that's going to build you up too. And then it'll just magnify itself automatically, actually, quite organically. And for the other ones, be discerning. Like, just don't LinkedIn everybody, right? Find the people who align with your why, with your integrity, and that'll only bolster your own.
I think one of the things you guys said when you talked about authenticity, right, and that comes up all the time, right? I remember when I first became a CEO and I had to use the title, people ask me all the time, how long did it take you to use the title? And it was probably a good year, I would say, before I can use the words. I was like, I'm a sales manager, I'm a director of sales. Like, we kept raising the bar for my title. Eventually, I just gave it up and kind of just used it. You know, I remember when someone came to me and said, "You're not CEO like enough," and I was like, "Well, what does that actually mean?" You know, I'm just me. Like, I'm too old to change, and I'm not going to change who I am. I'm my authentic self, right? And I think, like what you said, Bonnie, before, was people want to do business with people they like, people they can connect with, people that are real and authentic. And I think that's the one thing that we definitely bring to the table, right? Is that, right? I'm going to remember somebody who remembered me, or they're going to remember me when I remember them. And I think just being authentic and your true self is something that is a little bit different about us as women, right? Because we are that. I can't be any more of a CEO than I am. I can't change who I am, so this is what you get. Maybe in my 20s, sure, but now you get what you get. But I'm fine with that, though. I'm comfortable in my own skin to the best of my ability. But I definitely think that being authentic is something that's truly important and resonates with everybody.
You know, something to Cheyenne was saying too, just regarding being, being human, right? I mean, I think part of when we were in that time of the lockdown and all that, humans are tribal people, if you will. We need people to thrive. We need people to talk to, because when you're siloed like that, you just feel so alone, and then you start to go down paths that you don't necessarily wouldn't have if you were with other people. And to be personable and to ask those questions, because they will remember you, and it's just not automatic. It's not like your checklist. Oh, let me ask about their family, let me ask about their vacation. It's like you really want to be remembered, remember those moments of that person, because it also helps you connect. So the next time you see them, it's like, oh my God, how was your son's play, or how was the baseball game? And you're like, oh yeah, it was great. And it kind of just gets that ball rolling for that particular meeting. It just kind of level sets it, kind of makes it okay, we're kind of good, we're on the same page, whatever, we have that rapport. And I think that is definitely helpful when you kind of interact with people, to sort of build your network, and they will remember you for that.
Yeah, I think that's a big piece of it, right? Just being memorable and being, I think Cheyenne, you said it before, right? Just being confident in yourself and your abilities, right? When you walk in a room, no matter who's there, right? You're confident in who you are. I think that's part of the most important thing for me is, listen, I get nervous when I walk in a room. I went to Best of Breed for CRN, and I was the only female CEO in the room. Not my most proudest moment. I was either going to cry in my hotel room and never come out, or I was just going to walk in and find a seat and sit down next to, one of the big competitors and be like, hey, I'm here.
Just own it.
Just own it. And that's hard, right? It's hard for women to own it. I don't think it's something that we do regularly, but it's using each other, right? That helps. Right. I know, Teresa Lane had commented one day on one of the comments, that's because the company's run by a real person, right? We're run by real people, and we try. Sometimes that changes a little as you get bigger, but you're trying very hard to keep to being real, right? To keep to being a person, because customers will come, vendors will come, and they'll give it to you if you're actually being a person and you're being real. Let's see, we got questions here. So we talk about imposter syndrome all the time, right? That's a question that I don't particularly care for all the time, but I think because I suffer from it, so when you look at imposter syndrome, right, I know I suffer from it, so I know it's something I don't like to talk about very often, right? I think we talked about it a lot last week at the CRN, where most of the women in the room talked about it, right? It's something it affects them directly. How do you feel about the whole imposter syndrome words?
It's an interesting concept, but again, it's to what I was just saying. You have to own it, because if you were invited there, you earned it. You know what I mean? So you have to say, well, I'm here because they earned it. So I'm on equal terms. I'm here, they're here. So you have to just know that, with the confidence and self-reliance, that I belong here. And you just have to tell yourself that. Sometimes you do need to be your own little cheerleader inside your own head. Why you do have that network to, kind of know that they're virtually behind you. But when you're in those moments, you know what, you just say, no, I'm here because I deserve that seat. I was invited. I didn't just crash the party. So
Sure,
when you
that's
walk
true.
in there and, your name is on that, you have your badge, then you earn being there, and you just have to embrace that, and knowing that you walk in with that confidence and carry that with you all the way through, and you will earn that as time goes on. And then, you know what, you're like, yeah, I know I do belong here.
Yeah, it takes a lot.
It does take a lot. It certainly does.
So
but
anybody who feels that way, it takes a lot and a lot of years to kind of get past it.
it does, and it's not something that you just walk out of the gate, because then it becomes a little arrogant, right?
Right.
But you feel like as you come across those situations and you've been in those where you kind of maybe stood out, like, or maybe went to the back of the room or just kind of observed a little bit, and then all of a sudden you start to feel yourself, I have an opinion, I can chime in a little bit, and then you start to like go closer to the front of the room, and then you raise your hand, and it just
Yeah.
kind of happens organically. But then you kind of like you go 2 steps forward, and then you're at that plateau, and then all of a sudden you kind of step back a little bit, and then you kind of keep moving up. So I think you might be able to relate to that too.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I've had imposter syndrome. I remember the first time I heard that word, that term, I was like, that's me. That's, for every moment I've been in cybersecurity sales. But, a couple comments on that. One, I definitely think that, I have some bravery in me and a willingness to step outside my comfort zone, and that has served me well. Then when I've been in meetings when, especially early on in my career, I couldn't get over how many acronyms people spoke in tech. And regularly I would just raise my hand. I remember my first grade teacher, Helen Fleming, wonderful woman, who said there are no stupid questions, which people might debate this, but I think it's worth to remember. If you don't raise your hand to say, I'm sorry, I don't know what that acronym means, or can you explain that term to me, or I've never heard that before. It's what I learned later is how many other people in the room that I thought were so much smarter than me and really belonged in the room came to me later and said, I didn't know what that acronym meant either, and thanks for asking. And I'm like, gosh, why isn't anybody else raising their hand just to say, hey, I'm not familiar with that term, or can you explain that concept to me, or that acronym to me, or and that we use the term authenticity a lot. One, I think that branded me as authentic, because they're like, oh, she's not afraid to ask questions. And in sales, you have to ask questions that are uncomfortable and that are bold, and so that has served me well. The other thing, I'll tell you a funny story that just happened the other night that really blew my mind. I was at a dinner with a very famous person in cybersecurity. I won't mention their name. Is a man who, great guy, but who speaks in front of Congress, testifies in front of Congress, is on, talking on, as a guest on news programs all the time about cybersecurity and the threat landscape. And he was sharing with me and the group of folks that we were talking with that when he first saw himself on TV, the recordings later, he had to like drink a bottle of wine because he's like, ooh, I said, too much, or I said right too much. And I was like, you did that? Like, I thought only I did that, or a few other like handful of people that felt unsure of themselves. And it just made me realize that here's this gentleman who speaks in front of Congress who was questioning whether he, answered things in a way that, made him sound intelligent or not, or if he was coming, he had to hone his craft in terms of public speaking. And it just reminds you that, everybody has to learn and start somewhere. I also think I've worked with some very confident sales guys. I mean, I have worked with some type A, like the world is your oyster boys. Like they were just sure that they were, made to go grab the brass ring, right? And we're probably told that their whole life, and God bless them, it's amazing. But sometimes I'd be like, what would Dave do, or what would Bob do? Because I'm scared to go in this meeting, but Bob would go in this meeting like, what, I'm here, y'all, like, I deserve to be here. And so I would just kind of channel a little of that and think, well, I'm going to still be me because I'm a sweet, empathetic, loving person, but I can channel a little bit of that, like, I got this, and to your point, about being your own cheerleader, right? Like having that inner voice to tell you, I belong here. If Bob or Dave belongs here, I'm just throwing those names out as examples. So do I, and so does Cheyenne. So yeah.
It's super. I think in terms of the imposter syndrome, I think like when you were both speaking, what struck me were the stories that you were telling yourselves, or actually even Maryann. And I think they can be a real block to us sometimes. So as you are just become a little bit aware as you're going through, when you're walking into meetings or as you're having your conversations with folks, like what stories are actually telling yourself? And then what evidence do you actually have of it being true? Because it could really be holding you back. So for the longest time, because I grew up around so many men, so many boys, I'm like, I don't have any close girlfriends. Like, I don't have this capacity, maybe. And then I look back at it and I'm like, no, I had it, but it was just something that was fed to me, right? And just the way it's fed to girls, like you can't be good at math or you can't be good at science, whatever it might be. And like, do you really want to do that? Because a bunch of guys, it's all boring, right? Like this is what was fed to me. My parents were a little bit different, but that's what I got from the outside. And so like, you have to be careful to understand like what you might be internalizing as well. So I think a lot of the imposter syndrome, yes, it's being authentic to yourself, and yes, allowing yourself to maybe look vulnerable in ways that may not be as acceptable more broadly. But I think that's maybe the genesis of it, and just to understand maybe where it comes from.
I love that. What evidence do you have? That's, to have those negative thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
That's really
I think we're in tune with them, right? Negative thoughts kind of come easy, right? Positive thoughts come very difficult.
Well, it's easy to believe the negative sometimes.
Yeah, it is, and I think for people coming up in the industry or people new to the industry or the younger generation, people kind of coming up, right? I think it's very important for you guys to just be confident without going overboard, right? Because we said that, right? Because you don't want to be that woman in the room that's overconfident, right? Because then you get labeled, a little bit different. I think as we have about 10 minutes or so left, to talk a little bit about like how do we help each other, right? Right, it's a season of giving, right? How do we continue to help each other, and how do people that are out there watching who are looking for a career in tech, how do they get connected with people? What's the suggestion that we have for people to help them kind of pave their own way, right? For me, it's again networking. Reach out to people that you know, right? Reach out to us. That's kind of why we're a woman-owned business, right? To come out to me and can come sit with me, right? I've had plenty of people just stop by my office, say, hey, can we just have coffee? I saw a LinkedIn. Can I just understand your story a little bit better? And that's kind of empowering, right? Because if you feel like someone actually was affected by something that you said, and that's kind of why we continue to do these and make them even better for people. So for advice to give to people, I think it's use your network, be confident in who you are, right? And just make your own way. I always tell people, because I remember someone telling me when I quit my job and started the business, as I made you who you are today, so you can't go do your own. And I was like, no, you gave me a forum to be who I wanted to be, and I made myself who I am. So nobody owes you don't owe anybody anything. Your employer is your employer, and you do with that employment and that business opportunity that you've been given, right? And you make your own way.
Yeah, any advice for a person or a young woman just starting out, it all goes back to the networking. I if you're not in the field right now and you're looking for a job or graduating college, go to the network. I'm sure a campus would have something like that, whether it's a group for women going into a certain field. Reach out to any of the advisory councils that are on the campus. They have a huge network. You need to start somewhere before you build your own network. So I think it's important to, keep those relationships throughout the years, but it's also important to keep reconnecting, because you don't want to say, hey, remember me like 5 years ago? I reached out to you. And it's like, yeah, no, it's almost like, no, it takes effort.
A lot of effort.
It takes a lot of effort, and to really develop those relationships. And it's you start, and then eventually they start to weed themselves out. They either don't return your call, or you find out that they went into a different direction that's completely different from you. It's always a nice acquaintance to have,
Yes.
and just to kind of keep up with them. But to help you move into your own career goals and paths that you want, get those right people in your network. Join whatever you can in your communities. And it's not even so much on a business side. I'm active in my community, and even at the horse rescue, there's so many different walks of life there. There's so many different people that have a lot of experiences. I made friends with one woman, and I didn't even know she edits people's biography books for a living. And I'm like, I didn't realize you did that. We're mucking stalls, and you're editing someone's bio, it's just amazing. And it's like somebody who and it's like they know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. I also do have a senior in college too. And it's like, I'll help him as best as I can. It's like, and you never know, you pass that resume along, but they might know somebody or an uncle or somebody who knows. So it's just that ripple effect of that networking, and keep those relationships going.
Well, as far as helping, I would love to see more women in tech sales. And and I think that I'd really love to see more women in sales leadership. The further you go up the chain, the fewer women there are. So there'll be a lot of female business development reps, which is a very, a very respectable entry level role in sales. Then there'll be like a really good amount of inside or commercial female sales reps. And then it gets sparser at the enterprise or, space, mid-market space. And then it gets, even sparser up at the VP level or director and then VP. And when you finally get to chief revenue officer, it's, almost none. And I think that's sad. And I'd love to see, more women. A lot of times you see women in supporting, nothing wrong with this, supporting roles, whether it's, sales operations roles or something where they're helping the salespeople. And I hear this over and over again when I talk to women and I'm trying to pressure them. I'm not trying to help them get in. I'm like dragging them, like, come on, you can do this, because there's a lot of monetary upside in sales that you don't get in any other job. And for anybody who, I hate to say this, but money is power in a certain respect. And there's something to be said for being able to wield that power in a good way to help our community and our world be a better place. So I'd love to see more women, have that power up at the top of the food chain. But when I talk to a lot of women, they're like, it's so cutthroat though. And you do have to build thick skin, right? I've been on forecast calls where you're getting, not berated, but there's like, you're a publicly traded company and you're responsible for, bringing in $5 million in, you're a quota carrying rep, or you're a VP and you're responsible for bringing in 50 million a year. You better have answers to the questions that you're being asked. So yeah, it is a very under a microscope, sort of black and white. You're either bringing in sales or you're not. But I always tell women who are a little frightened of that is like, just think, like, what's the worst that can happen? You fail every once in a while. I have failed occasionally, but like slowly but surely, even with a failure every once in a while, I've worked my way up and I'm not done. And I think that I'd love to see more women be willing to take that on. And because one thing I have noticed about the men that I've worked with from a sales capacity is they brush off failure like it's nothing. They're not knocked down by, oh, whatever, that didn't work out, I'm on to the next one. Whereas, so let's remember that, because, and I, shout out to anybody who's on LinkedIn right now who's wants to get into the sales profession, please hit me up. I'm always happy to give my 2 cents. And that doesn't just go for women, that goes for everybody. I'd also love to see more women of color in sales. As a sales leader, I'm always looking to recruit diversity on the team. It's not a cliche. I think it's critical. We just don't have enough diversity in tech sales and in tech in general. So I'm happy to help, but I would say, be brave, because fortune favors the brave, they say. And I think it's really true.
Yeah, I agree. To add to what the other ladies have already said, I would say, start with your why. Like, what is your why? And seek out those who have similar whys or who add to your why. It's like, I'm sure we all get asked to be on panels or have speaking opportunities, but for Maryann, this is the first one that I've actually taken because it actually aligns with my why. If you're familiar with Dunbar's number or layers, it's like, you can only make an impact so far, right, in all your networks. I could have taken these other ones, but they were way out here. Here I'm able to make an impact and give back in a much closer realm to myself. So it's about being authentic. It's about your why. And then I would also say, not only the stories we tell ourselves, but let's talk about our real stories, right? And everybody has one, like the person who's mugging your stall, right? Like, you're just like, what? Everybody has such an interesting story. And I think that's what makes life so rich for all of us. And, to network and you want to get into a space, ask yourself why you want to get into a space and who can potentially help you, yes. But what what are you going to bring to the space, right? And I think that will also help build up your own confidence. And if you don't have the skills, just go get them, right? Or ask somebody who's got them. It takes a village, right? So I would just say, like, be confident in the fact that you will make your own way, right? When I got out of school, I'm like, I still don't know what I'm going to do. Like, sure, I got a double E, but now what am I going to do? All right. But, you know, have a general sense of your destination and get there if it aligns with your why. And if not, just pivot. It's not the end of the world, as Cheyenne says. I mean, it's only a true failure if you don't learn from it. So I'd say just stay steadfast, figure out what your why is. And if you don't understand what I mean by what your why is, think about like the first car that you bought. You got it and you're like, this is it. Or if you got married, you get into your wedding dress, you're like, this is it. Like, can you really articulate like why? It's in a different part of your brain, so probably not. But you get familiar with that feeling. And if you can truly like try to hone in on it, I think it will help you figure out which doors to step through, to be brave to step through a lot faster without having like paralysis analysis. So hopefully that's helpful.
Perfect. Thank you. So guys, time's up, 45 minutes. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you for my panel. It's been a great year. So thank you very much. And we'll catch you next year. Thank you.